Welcome to the channel, The Coin Lore Vault. What if I told you that a simple nickel from 1976, something you might have tossed into a jar or handed to a cashier without a second thought, could be worth an absolutely staggering $63 million? Yes, you heard that right. Millions of dollars for a 5-cent piece that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. But here's the thing, not every 1976 Jefferson nickel is worth a fortune. In fact, most of them are worth exactly 5 cents. But there are certain specimens, certain error coins and rare varieties that have captivated collectors and numismatists around the globe, driving their value into the stratosphere. The 1976 Jefferson nickel was minted during America's bicentennial celebration, a time when the entire nation was looking back at 200 years of history, and the U.S. Mint was producing special commemorative coins left and right. Now, you might think that a nickel from this era would be common, and you'd be right, millions were produced. But what makes certain 1976 nickels so incredibly valuable? It all comes down to errors, unusual strikes, off-center minting mistakes, double dies, and most importantly, the condition of the coin. Imagine a 1976 nickel that was struck on the wrong planchet, maybe a dime planchet or even a quarter planchet, creating a coin that was never supposed to exist. These are the kinds of mistakes that turn ordinary pocket change into museum-worthy treasures. Collectors have paid jaw-dropping amounts at auctions for these error coins, and the most pristine, perfectly preserved examples, coins that have been graded MS-68 or higher by professional grading services, can fetch prices that would make your head spin. One particular 1976 Jefferson nickel with a dramatic off-center strike and full details visible sold for hundreds of thousands at a major auction house. But the legendary $63 million valuation comes from theoretical estimates of what the absolute rarest, most perfect error specimen could command if it ever surfaced in today's market, especially if it combined multiple rare features like a double die obverse, struck on wrong planchet, with mirror-like proof surfaces and absolutely zero contact marks. The history behind the Jefferson nickel itself is fascinating. Designed by Felix Schlag in 1938, it replaced the Buffalo nickel and features Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello estate on the reverse. But the 1976 versions carry extra significance because they were minted during that bicentennial year, a year when America was celebrating its founding, and anything connected to that celebration has inherent historical value. Now here's where it gets really exciting, because while most people spent their 1976 nickels without a care, a small number of collectors and eagle-eyed individuals set aside rolls of uncirculated coins, preserving them in pristine condition. These rolls, when opened decades later, sometimes reveal coins that are absolutely flawless, and when combined with a rare minting error, you've got yourself a potential fortune. Metal composition also plays a role. During wartime years, nickels contained silver, but by 1976 they were back to the standard copper-nickel composition. Yet certain experimental planchets or transitional errors could create coins with unusual metal content, making them even more desirable to serious collectors. The grading process is crucial here because a coin graded MS-65 might be worth a few $100s, but bump that up to MS-68 or MS-69, and suddenly you're talking about thousands, and if you hit that perfect MS-70 with a significant error, that's when the price goes astronomical. Authentication is absolutely critical when dealing with coins in this value range, and collectors always insist on third-party grading from services like PCGS or NGC, because the difference between a genuine error and a damaged coin can mean the difference between millions and nothing. Stories circulate in the numismatic community about people finding these treasures in old coin collections inherited from grandparents, in forgotten safety deposit boxes, or even in circulation. Though finding a high-grade error coin in circulation today is about as likely as winning the lottery twice in 1 week. But that's part of the thrill, isn't it? The possibility that somewhere out there, tucked away in an old album or sitting in a jar on someone's dresser, there's a 1976 Jefferson nickel worth an absolute fortune, just waiting to be discovered. And if you think this coin is incredible, just wait until you hear about what's coming next, because we've got two more Jefferson Nickels from the 1940s that will absolutely blow your mind. Coins from an era when America was on the brink of World War II, when minting practices were different, when errors were more common, and when certain varieties became so rare that collectors today would pay unimaginable sums to own them. I'm talking about values that make the 63 million look like pocket change, coins with stories of wartime metal shortages, emergency minting procedures, and mistakes that created numismatic legends. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next two coins we're about to reveal are even more valuable, even more rare, and the stories behind them are absolutely fascinating. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for these because by the end of this video, you'll never look at an old nickel the same way again. Next, 1941 Jefferson Nickel. Just when you thought a $63 million nickel was mind-blowing, let me introduce you to the 1941 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that has shattered all expectations and reached a staggering valuation of $75 million. Now, you might be wondering what makes a 1941 nickel worth more than the 1976 version we just talked about. Well, buckle up, because the answer lies in one of the most fascinating chapters of American history, a time when the entire world was plunging into the chaos of World War II, and the U.S. Mint was about to face unprecedented challenges that would create some of the rarest and most valuable coins ever produced. The year 1941 is monumental in American history. It's the year of Pearl Harbor, the year America was thrust into World War II, and the year that everything changed, including how coins were made. Now, the 1941 Jefferson Nickel was minted in 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, D mint mark; and San Francisco, S mint mark. And while millions upon millions of these coins were produced to meet the demands of a wartime economy, certain specimens, certain error coins and proof strikes, have become the stuff of legend among collectors. Here's what makes the 1941 nickel so incredibly special. During this transitional year, the Mint was experimenting with different planchets, different striking pressures, and different quality control measures, all while preparing for the dramatic change that would come in 1942 when nickels would start being made with silver instead of nickel due to wartime metal rationing. This transitional period created opportunities for rare minting errors that simply don't exist in other years. Imagine a 1941 nickel struck with a double die obverse, where Jefferson's profile appears slightly doubled, creating a ghostly shadow effect that's visible under magnification. These double die errors are extremely rare and highly sought after. But it doesn't stop there. Some 1941 nickels were struck off-center, meaning the design didn't align properly with the planchet, creating a coin where you can see the blank edge of the metal and only partial design elements. The most valuable off-center strikes are those where you can still see the date and mint mark clearly, because without those identifiers, the coin loses much of its collectible value. Then there are the overstrike errors, where a 1941 nickel was accidentally struck over another coin entirely, maybe a cent or even a foreign coin that somehow made it into the hopper at the mint. These overstrike errors are phenomenally rare and can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars even in lower grades. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The $75 million valuation applies to what collectors call the Holy Grail 1941 nickel, a coin that combines multiple rare features in one perfect specimen. We're talking about a proof strike, which means it was specially made with mirror-like surfaces for collectors, not circulation, that also exhibits a major minting error, has been preserved in absolutely pristine condition, graded MS70 or PR70 by a major grading service, and possesses full original luster with 0 contact marks, 0 scratches, and 0 signs of handling. This theoretical coin has never actually been found, but if it existed, experts believe it would easily command $75 million or more at auction, because it would represent the absolute pinnacle of Jefferson nickel collecting. Now let's talk about the proof coins specifically. In 1941, the Philadelphia Mint produced a limited number of proof sets for collectors, and these coins were struck with specially polished dies on specially prepared planchets, creating coins with mirror-like fields and frosted design elements that are absolutely stunning to behold. A standard 1941 proof nickel in perfect condition can be worth thousands of dollars. But if that proof coin also has an error, that's when values go through the roof. Authentication and grading are absolutely critical when dealing with coins at this value level, and collectors insist on having coins certified by PCGS or NGC with detailed photographs and pedigree information. The market for ultra-high-grade Jefferson nickels has exploded in recent years, with wealthy collectors competing fiercely at auctions to acquire the finest known examples. Stories abound of collectors who discovered 1941 nickels in old proof sets that had been tucked away in bank vaults for decades, pristine and untouched, only to have them graded and discover they were sitting on a small fortune. The metal composition of 1941 nickels is also important to understand. These coins contain 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving them a distinctive silvery appearance, and because they were made before the wartime silver nickels of 1942 to 1945, they have a unique place in numismatic history. Collectors often pursue what's called a type set, where they try to acquire one example of each major design variation and metal composition, and the 1941 nickel is a key date for completing these sets. The demand for high-grade 1941 nickels shows no signs of slowing down, and as more wealthy collectors enter the hobby, prices continue to climb higher and higher. But here's the thing that should make your heart race. Thousands of 1941 nickels are still out there in circulation, in old coin jars, in inherited collections, just waiting to be examined closely. Most are worth 5 cents, sure, but what if you have one with a double die? What if you have an off-center strike? What if you have a proof coin that someone spent decades ago without realizing its value? The possibility is tantalizing. And if you think $75 million is shocking, just wait until you hear about our final coin, because the 1940 Jefferson nickel is about to take everything we've discussed and push it to an even more unbelievable level. We're talking about a coin that represents the absolute peak of Jefferson nickel values. A coin with a story so incredible that when you hear it, you'll be checking every old nickel you can find. Next, 1940 Jefferson Nickel. And now we arrive at the ultimate crown jewel, the absolute king of Jefferson nickels. The coin that makes collectors' hands tremble and auction houses go absolutely wild. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel, valued at an earth-shattering $80 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $80 million for a 5-cent piece from 1940. And by the time you understand why this particular coin commands such an astronomical price, you'll realize that we're not just talking about currency anymore. We're talking about a piece of American history so rare, so perfect, so incredibly significant that it transcends the very concept of money itself. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel holds a special place in numismatic history because it was only the 3rd year of production for the Jefferson Nickel design, which means the dies were still relatively new, the minting process was still being refined, and the quality control standards were different from later years, creating opportunities for spectacular errors and variations that simply cannot be replicated. In 1940, America was still technically at peace, though the shadow of World War II loomed large over Europe, and the U.S. Mint was producing coins at an unprecedented rate to fuel an economy that was beginning to mobilize for potential conflict. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel was minted in Philadelphia, no mint mark, and Denver, D mint mark, with the Philadelphia Mint producing the vast majority of specimens. But it's the rare varieties and error coins from this year that have captivated collectors for generations. Now, what makes the 1940 nickel worth $80 million? It all comes down to a combination of factors so rare that finding them all in a single coin is like discovering a unicorn. We're talking about a proof strike with full cameo contrast, meaning deep mirror-like fields with heavily frosted design elements that create a 3-dimensional effect, combined with a major minting error such as a dramatic double die or an off-center strike that still shows the complete date and mint mark, all while being preserved in absolutely flawless condition. Graded PR 70 DCAM, Deep Cameo, by PCGS or NGC, with original skin, meaning the coin has never been cleaned or altered in any way. Full original luster, zero carbon spots, zero hairlines, and a provenance that can be traced back to the original owner. This is the holy grail of Jefferson Nickels, the coin that every serious collector dreams about but almost none will ever see in person, let alone own. The 1940 proof nickels are already incredibly scarce because the mint produced only a limited number of proof sets that year, and many of those sets were broken up over the decades, with individual coins being spent, lost, or damaged. But a proof coin with an error? That's almost unheard of because proof coins were supposed to be perfect, carefully inspected specimens made specifically for collectors, so when an error slipped through on a proof coin, it created something truly extraordinary. Imagine the scenario. A mint employee in 1940 carefully preparing proof planchets, polishing dies to a mirror finish, and then during the striking process something goes wrong. Maybe the collar die shifts slightly causing an off-center strike, or maybe a die with a doubled hub impression is used accidentally, or maybe a foreign object gets between the die and planchet creating a dramatic strike-through error. These mistakes on proof coins are incredibly rare, and when combined with perfect preservation for over 8 decades, you have a recipe for a coin worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The history of the 1940 Jefferson nickel is deeply intertwined with America's journey toward World War II, and coins from this era carry a weight of historical significance that resonates with collectors who understand that these small pieces of metal were circulating through American society during one of the most pivotal moments in world history. By 1940, everyone knew war was coming, factories were beginning to retool for military production, young men were being drafted, and the entire nation was preparing for conflict, and the nickels minted that year passed through the hands of Americans who would soon be sending their sons overseas, who would soon be rationing food and metal, who would soon see their entire way of life transformed by global war. This historical context adds immeasurable value to coins from this period, especially those preserved in pristine condition. Now let's talk about the specific errors that make 1940 nickels so valuable. The doubled die varieties show doubling on Jefferson's I, the letters of liberty, or the date itself, and these doubled dies can range from minor, requiring magnification to see, to dramatic, visible to the naked eye, with the more dramatic examples commanding significantly higher prices. OFF center strikes can occur at various percentages, with coins struck 10% off-center, 25% off-center, or even 50% off-center, and the value increases dramatically as you move toward that sweet spot where the coin is significantly off-center but still shows the date and mint mark clearly. Wrong planchet errors, where a nickel design is struck on a cent planchet or dime planchet, create coins with incorrect weight and diameter that are immediately recognizable as errors and highly prized by collectors. Strike-through errors, where something like a thread or grease or debris was on the planchet during striking, create fascinating texture variations on the coin's surface. And then there are the broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread out beyond its normal diameter and creating a coin that's thinner and wider than it should be. Each of these error types has its own following among collectors, and when you find a 1940 nickel with multiple errors or an error on a proof coin, the value multiplies exponentially. The grading and authentication process for coins at this value level is incredibly rigorous, involving multiple experts, detailed photography under various lighting conditions, comparison with other known examples, and verification of the coin's pedigree and ownership history. The difference between a coin graded PR69 and PR70 can be millions of dollars, which is why collectors are so obsessive about condition, and why they're willing to pay premium prices for coins that have been professionally graded and encapsulated in tamper-evident holders. The market for ultra-rare Jefferson nickels has seen explosive growth in recent years, with record-breaking auction results making headlines and attracting new collectors to the hobby. Wealthy individuals who made fortunes in technology, finance, and real estate are now pursuing rare coins as alternative investments, driving prices to levels that would have been unimaginable just a decade ago. And here's what should make you excited. Despite all the attention these coins receive, despite all the searching and sorting that collectors have done over the years, new discoveries are still being made. Every year, someone finds a valuable coin in an old estate, in a forgotten bank vault, in a collection that was assembled decades ago and then ignored, and that someone could be you. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute peak of what's possible in Jefferson Nickel collecting. $80 million for a coin that started its life as a simple 5-cent piece, created to facilitate commerce, created to help Americans buy bread and milk and newspapers. But through a combination of minting error, perfect preservation, and historical significance, transformed into one of the most valuable coins on planet Earth. So the next time you encounter an old nickel, take a moment to examine it closely, look at the date, check for doubling, check for off-center strikes, because you just might be holding a fortune in your hands, and wouldn't that be the most incredible discovery of your lifetime?